We've got a new episode of the IAE show, which is kind of what CIG is doing this year. Instead of Star Citizen Lives and Inside Star Citizens during IAE, they do something slightly different every year. This has been okay, but the episodes are a bit short. Let's see what John Crew and Rich Tyra have to say, though, about capital ship gameplay in this one.
Space Expo, and your guide to the future of spacecraft and vehicles in the verse. Today's topic, Capital Combat, with Rich Tyra, John Crew, and Jared Huckabee. Stay tuned, it's the IAE show, and it starts right now.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming back. We're here for part 2 of our discussion on the life of spaceships in Star Citizen. I want to follow up on something, Rich, that you kind of hinted at in part 1. You mentioned the Squadron 42 demo several times and this experience that was being built at. It's not just a cinematic thing for the start of the show. It's actually seems to be reflective of this capital warfare experience that we're attempting to build here. So I want to ask you outright, how is capital warfare supposed to work? What are we building towards, and why should folks be excited?
If you, by the way, if this is a topic that interests you, just had a really, really good talk on the latest Launch Sequence podcast. It's on the second channel, Space Tomato 2. We do it every week. Again, if you're a supporter, if you got gifted a sub or a membership or anything during this, and you want, you can like come and watch that podcast live. You can ask questions to our guests. You can chat with us while we're going. You can hear our gossip before and after. That's another one of the benefits you get from being a supporter. So make sure to take advantage of that. But if you are interested in this type of gameplay and what you hear here, me and Croncy had a fantastic talk about capital ship gameplay. Will it work? How is it going to work? Why is it why is it impressive? How does it fit into the original vision of Star Citizen? All over in the podcast. Came out like 10 hours ago. And it's a good watch and or listen. Check it out.
To sort of approach is, it shouldn't just be the same gameplay as small ships, just scaled up. It needs to be, we talked about progression, it should be a progression of gameplay. So you can't just turn up, lob 50 torpedoes at a ship, press the I win button and go on. You've got to remove those defenses layer by layer. So capital ships have multiple defenses. Obviously they have turrets on them for shooting ships. They also have PDCs for disabling closer targets such as missiles and torpedoes, and then they have physicalized shield emitters, which is what you saw in the demo where Cal Mason sort of kites a Vandal ship into it. So you need to take all those things.
Yo, I'm really happy that we're seeing shield emitters, because I don't remember just how long ago they were around for quite a while. So you can like go to the. Once again, you go to find their design documents. Okay, YouTube, you relax. It is a big thanks moment, YouTube, but chill. You go to their design documents, as always, these things that they were made like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and you could scroll down and you'll find the literal things that they are just now starting to implement into the game. But shield emitters was one of those things, and it was, let's see, where the heck? Here we go. One way this could be as the ships we implement continue to get larger, we begin to see opportunities to further physicalize our systems. The strongest elements of Star Citizen give a sense of really existing, functioning such that it can be seen performing its functions, rather than tucked safely away behind a menu or hidden deep within the ship. One way this could be applied to the shield system is by associating shield faces with stabilization shield emitters, simple little devices placed upon the hull of a ship that conspire to emit an interference pattern which facilitates the movement of energy through the shield system while allowing it to retain its effective shape. All of which is to say that doing damage to an emitter would reduce the health of its shield face, making angle of attack even more important than it already is. So again, this is it's kind of nuts, because I find it both annoying and impressive that you can go back 9 years in this development to a document that was written out and never edited over those 9 years, and they still ring true with the stuff that they're doing. It's awesome. It's great. I love that you guys are sticking with it. It's just like it's crazy that there's 9 years between it being written and like starting to actually be implemented for some of these features, and you can just go through the whole lot of these pages, from the mobiGlas to the damage system, mining, to FPS stances, cargo interaction, all these things have so much stuff in them that's like, oh, that's happening right now. Interesting. Good for them, though. I'm glad that they're really starting to get around to the actual game part of this stuff that they've been making. But here they go. They talk about it more in depth now, since they're actually getting it coded out and designed for the game.
In progression, to stand a chance against a capital ship.
So it's not just a brute force thing. I know a lot of folks are imagining just coming in with an A2 and dropping a Moab on top of an Idris or something like this. It sounds like there's a puzzle to be solved here. Is that how you would say it, Rich?
A puzzle. Capital ship gameplay can't just be what we're already doing but bigger, right? And I think we're going to get really into the whole turrets and master modes discussion here. It's going to be great. We're going to gnash our teeth together. I'm looking forward to it. But capital ship gameplay is a puzzle that depends on a lot of different game elements coming together correctly. And they're starting to finally give that more clear communication on that now. I'm actually working on a video right now talking about how it seems this IAE is a bit different because of how much people want to go for smaller ships than bigger ones. And some of this stuff seems to be part of it. Tell us about this puzzle. I love puzzles.
Ultimately, capital ship warfare should be a puzzle that you have to figure out. If you actually watch that cinematic for the squadron demo, you'll notice that one of the lines is, "Hey Cal, I don't think your weapons are large enough to be able to take out that shield emitter."
Yeah, Cal,
shield Jenny,
loser,
as they say. And he says, "You may be right." And that is actually true. You shouldn't be able to turn up with small ships and small caliber weapons against a huge capital ship. And it's what we touched on in part 1 in terms of the physicalized nature of the damage.
Okay. Now we're starting to get into a little bit of meta. This is like, this stuff, this is huge. This goes so freaking deep. We're going to have a couple podcast episodes to talk about this. You can go into the ship matrix. You can go through the list of ships here, and you can see the difference between a ship that is built as a large fighter that will fight against other fighters, and do the damage that you need to those, something like maybe a Vanguard, or a ship that is a large fighter but is also meant to take out much larger ships, something like an Ares, which has a much larger gun on it. And this starts to this is where you start to get a difference in the ships that goes beyond just the stats on the paper. Yeah, of course, your gun stat is like, technically it's on paper, but the difference between a ship that can shoot a size 5 gun or a size 4 gun versus a size 1 or 2 gun is going to do a different type of damage, and probably will not be worth taking out for other types of things that require smaller ships. That's why you get a ship like the Perseus, which is specifically meant to take on other capital ships, versus a ship like the Hammerhead, which is about the same size, but it's meant to take on fighters. Different ships, different weapons, different needs, different causes. And that's sort of the whole point of the game, is like they put so much time and effort into all these ships. You need to have a reason to use a different ship. So over time, no matter what, you can look at any given ship and you can say there's no need for this, there's no reason for this. It is CIG's job, by the time Star Citizen 1.0 comes out, is to make sure that every single one of these ships has a specific reason that somebody would use it over another. And I think they do a fairly good job of that. I think the problem is that a lot of this gameplay just isn't in the game to make that clear. Things like armor, or bullet penetration, or VTOL thrust, or engineering, or life support. So we'll see how they can differentiate that, but I think there are more things that should go into the decision of which ship you take, besides the price it costs. One of the great things about Star Citizen is that they try to focus a ton on choice, and if there's one thing that games really struggle with, it is choice, because the more you give players choice, the more exponentially a game gets difficult to make. The less you give players choice, the more boring it is. The best RPGs we've ever had have always been the ones that kind of give you the sense of having choice when making decisions like KOTOR, making conversations like Mass Effect, or making use of your surroundings like Baldur's Gate 3. And Star Citizen does a good job of choice in weapons and armor and equipment, in starting locations and spaceships and in components. But it's been so neutered because they haven't been able to actually build out the game itself on top of that. They've only been building the engine to support it. Hopefully after 4.0 and with 4.0 in general, we'll see that happen a lot more. All right, back to this video. Let's go. Give us more.
If I fire a small caliber pistol at tank, it's not going to do much. Ares or a Retaliator is to allow you to soften up the capital ship shield so that you can actually then get access to the shield emitters and the PDCs and the weapons that are actually keeping your fighters away. And the way that the shield faces work is that they're underpinned by physicalized shield emitters, which are then connected to the core shield generator, or in large capital ships might have multiple shield generators. So ultimately, your first foray should be like, okay, which shield face are we going to try and soften up and dampen to weaken it, to be able to then send in our a squad of fighters to be able to target certain shield emitters, another squad to be able to target the PDCs, or in the case if you're taking a much larger ship, like a Javelin size, which will have flax. So you'll have to basically figure out, okay, this group or this squadron will take on this squadron will take on this, and this is where the hologlobe comes in terms of you're the admiral of the fleet. You're going, okay, right, I'm assigning you this target, and then if you're a fighter, you're going to then receive markers, and then obviously you're going to be connected to be able to say, okay, go now, I want you to attack now, because you need to have a coordinated alpha strike. If you just drip feed your damage over time, the capital ship will just be able to absorb it. So this is where you need to be able to go, okay, what's my tactics, what's my high level strategy? And then once you've taken out the PDCs and you've taken down a shield phase, that's when you've got essentially two options. One option will be to board, so you'll be able to then use our hacking gameplay, and then obviously you'll have to fight your way through to the bridge to be able to take over it. Or the other side is then you just, if your mission is to just destroy this ship, if you've taken down those layers of defenses like John says, that's where you then send in the torpedoes. So capital ship gameplay is again planned to utilize all the different roles of the different ships that we've made over the years, and it should be a significant challenge to be able to take out one of those larger ships.
So we talked about this, like I said, on the podcast a lot, like extensively. Me and Croncy got into the details of what he's saying here, of this idea that you need to bring in what I called it was like a chess game within a chess game within a game of AlphaGo. You've got to play this game of bait and attack with a capital ship, trying to focus on getting its PDCs down so that you can punch a hole through its shields, so that you can eventually damage its armor and disable its thrusters. So you've got steps on steps that you need to take in a strategic fashion to win a small battle in order to board the ship. And then when you board the ship, that's a whole different conflict that you kind of push off to the side. Now, meanwhile, let's say there's a fleet battle going on, then you've got this same thing going on in 4 other places, right? For the other team's 4 ships. But then you also have the defense of your own ships. So you've got 5v5 capital ships, multiple dogfighters, bombers, and anti-capital crafts, EMP ships, we'll say, flying around within those 5 or 10 capital ships. You got people on those turrets. You got engineers running around. They're repairing. Turret gunners are shooting fighters. Fighters are shooting PDCs. PDCs are shooting missiles coming from bombers who are being shot at by turrets. And then you've got drop ships that are flying in to board the capital ships, FPS people spilling out of those drop ships, people on the turrets trying to decide if they want to keep turret gunning or if they want to go grab a rifle and defend, people on the bridge who are venting out rooms and dropping life support from rooms to keep fires from spreading or to keep people from moving through certain areas. Just all kinds of things going on. This gameplay is insane. It's going to be really cool if they can pull it off.
Let's paint a picture here. What's one capital engagement supposed to be?
Well, let's just use save the Idris event,
okay,
if you want to go through.
Yeah, so realistically, when you're coming up to it, first thing you should be doing is scanning it so you know what you're going up against. You want to do a scan on it to work out where are its shield emitters, so then you can then plan, like we want to take the right-hand side shield emitter down. So we'll mark that as a target, give it to that group.
You might be sending in a terrapin or a forward ship to be able to get scan data that then relays that back to you on the Polaris.
It's also for anybody who has taken part in this kind of gameplay in the game right now. You know how much they need to work on their voice comm systems in Star Citizen for this to make sense. Because like being in just like a regular voice room with 20 people trying to coordinate a combat mission is awful. It's terrible. You see it on the stream here even. We need tiered comms in this game so badly. And the ability to quickly move between groups and stuff, just so much bad. So much batter. So batter muchly.
And your hologlobe, to be able to go, okay, now I've got some information to work with, how do I then approach it from there?
Yeah, because one capital versus another capital is probably the worst scenario if it's literally two single capitals. They need their fleets to reach their maximum potential, so you should be bringing these support ships with you. So yeah, you've scanned it, you've identified your point where you're going to be attacking, you assign a group of fighters from your ship or from your fleet, take away their fighters, try and attack their turrets, and then you run another group to sort of bring down those shield emitters. The majority of them will be under the skin, so you need to scan to find their locations and then target them specifically.
Using ADS.
Damage penetration.
Or precision targeting, as we should say.
So again, things like...
that's such a big like little slip up from Rich right there. Because it was probably in the, I want to say May monthly report maybe, that we got this mention of ADS scanning. And we're like, what does that mean? This is something that I talked about with Paul quite a bit, the Astropub. We're trying to figure out what the heck could ADS scanning be in a ship. And I think Rich just confirmed that ADS is basically just another word for precision targeting for them. Behind the scenes, April, what comes before April? March? Here we go. See, nobody knew what this was. The removal of scan operator mode started too, which will be replaced with ADS scanning. Nobody knew what ADS scanning was, because you're like, aim down sights is like a thing when you're in FPS combat. So how does that make sense for ships? But it sounds like he's confirming here that precision mode is ADS. So scanning in precision mode is what will be replacing scan operator mode at some point. I would assume that, maybe, I don't know if that's a 4.0 change, but soon.
Yes.
Damage penetration.
Or precision targeting, as we should say.
So again, things like the two starfighters are great for this role. So you have the Inferno, the ballistics will penetrate through, damage it. The Iron, great to bring the shields down to allow those ballistics to go even easier to the hull.
You've got to take out the PDCs as well.
Yep, PDCs as well.
So the PDCs won't just attack missiles and torpedoes, they will also attack other small objects. And so we need to make sure that you've created a safe zone or an entryway and you're punched through those defenses, and then you've got your options of either boarding or destruction, depending on what your objective is.
Sounds like something ideal for a light fighter, just taking down the PDCs.
Absolutely, like light fighter, heavy fighter, but you won't just be able to penetrate the shields on a capital ship because they'd be so heavy. So you'll need to use relevant weapon rate. That's where really the capital ship main weapons come in, because they're the ones that are actually doing the main damage on the shields to be able to soften it up, to allow their fighters and support ships. You can't just roll up and just try and out DPS it. I mean, you can, but you're rolling the dice. You know, is my ship, capital ship, going to be better than your capital ship? Am I going to be able to
I feel like a lot of people are just going to play that way.
It's
going to be a DPS race for a lot of folks in big ships, and it'll be interesting to see if strategy really does win out, or if people do just start to rely on trying to tank the DPS as hard as they can and be the first one to get the shields down.
Discuss about shield emitters. Right now, you have a shield generator that kind of creates a bubble, and we say, okay, this is this face, right face, left wing.
Hey,
if you look at the wing, if you shoot the wing from the front and it hits the front of the wing, we just automatically work out like, okay, is that the front face or is that the left face? And for the player, that's not super obvious. So you want to be in understanding like, okay, well, the shield actually hugs the ship. So we need to know, well, actually that's the left face. So you as a player can go, right, that's what we're targeting, that's what we need to bring down, because otherwise these shield generators are so powerful on capital ships, they'll just be coming back. And
throughout all of that, we've sort of assumed that the target ship is just sat there.
Absolutely.
You have the opposite, like you're on the ship.
The defender is spinning the ship around, trying to put trying to put their stronger side towards the attack.
You're seeing all this fire coming to this side, so you're now trying to maneuver yourself to avoid that. Counter players, they're trying to take out your thrusters to stop you maneuvering, so it is a big puzzle.
It's ridiculous,
Shield's
man.
Down.
That's so much. Are
cleared.
there?
That's where
I'm not the most educated on this topic. I'd love to hear from people in chat. Are there any other space games that go this far into combat? Like this, it's obviously it has a lot in common with Sea of Thieves. You can get holes punched in your hull. You can set fire to your ship. In Sea of Thieves, it's more a kind of flooding, but you need to attack and defend at the same time. But I don't know of many games where there's like a whole like you're controlling the offense, defense, maintenance of your ship and other ships at the same time. There are some single player games like that. Dude, I would like to try that, to be honest.
It's a ship to a combined arms.
Absolutely.
Thing, which is really what's most exciting to me, this idea that you now have to send troops over to breach, and board the ship.
Yeah, and also you might have to defend against being boarded. So if you're going up against another player and they've got a Polaris and you've got a Polaris, or when we add the Idris into the game and you're coming up, then you're going to have different mixes of gameplay when you're fighting over whether it's resources, station warfare, all the things that we've discussed previously. We've not really got to end game yet. We're still really at mid game. End game is fleet battles and being able to utilize these large ships, and then that comes back to TTD if you do lose, or you need salvage, or you need repair, or you need to rescue the people that are still on the ship. These types of battles, these types of combat add and are underpinned by so much more gameplay than what we've just discussed today. And I think that's where it starts to...
That's where this game gets lost, is how much gameplay they have planned for this stuff that doesn't get noticed, because it's like, I mean, nobody really believes it. Like, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. They could talk all they want about this kind of gameplay. For the most part, people don't believe it until it's actually in the game. So, like, even if people do know about this stuff, it's still just kind of like, okay, well, it'll happen at some point, maybe.
To connect the loops.
All right, so that's just a little bit about capital warfare. Thank you so much for sharing. Our viewers are going to be incredibly excited about that. The Polaris obviously makes its debut at this year's IAE, and while these systems are still in development and will continue to come out in 2025 and beyond, just having this vision intact here, people will be able to judge decisions that come in subsequent releases against the direction that we're going to. So thank you so much. Up next, I have to have a very uncomfortable conversation with Rich. He's a player in my D&D group, and he's been a little too min-maxy. So, Rich, let's talk about this, shall we?
Absolutely.
The classic returns.
So today on Lore Makers.
All right, so I just wanted to get a little update what they were talking about there. Some capital ship stuff. Mostly things that we know, but I think it's good to hear it reiterated again, I guess. It's just once again indicative of how much stuff there is that needs to be done for this game to work the way that they want it to. Even at this point, we get the engine kind of finished and all that stuff. I would say a traditional game would still not be announced at this point. They've got their engine built for the most part, and there's some gameplay to be had, and they've got direction towards 1.0. But I have the feeling that most games wouldn't be being talked about at this point in development yet. It'd still be like a couple more years. For Star Citizen, I think Squadron 42 would have had its release trailer, or its teaser trailer by now. And they'd be kind of getting ready to start their marketing for that game. But Star Citizen, at the place that it is right now, like straight up Elder Scrolls 6 sort of deal. Like, don't even talk about it, because there's so many things. Yeah, I think a lot of what they've been waiting to do that's complex, like, I feel like they haven't been quiet about this. They've been waiting for the game engine stuff to work, like persistent entity streaming and server meshing really needed to function correctly and be able to handle things before they could redo all the other stuff. That's why we haven't had That's why mining took forever to get worked on again. That's why salvage wasn't a thing. That's why the cargo refactor wasn't a thing. That's why engineering wasn't a thing. Components weren't a thing. The transit refactor for trains and ATC wasn't a thing. Elevators didn't get reworked because of that. The mission system didn't get reworked because of that. All of that stuff they've just been saying has been because the engine has taken so much of their development resources and time. So, I mean, I don't think them kicking the can on certain systems is a forever thing. I think that's something that has been happening for a specific reason. And if it's not alleviated by that reason and being passed on, then that's when, you start to turn the heat on a little bit and be like, hey, what's going on?